Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Civil Justice Subcommittee for February the 4th, 2026. The first order today is roll call. Mr. Clerk, take the roll.
Mr. Chairman, you have 7 members present. You have a quorum.
Thank you. Members, do we have any personal orders today? Seeing none, we'll begin with the calendar. We're going to take item number 2, House Bill 1508. We got a motion and a second, and Representative Todd, you are recognized. We did not show any amendments, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. It's an honor to be here in front of you. House Bill 1508 is amends the current code relative to enhanced handgun carrying permits. Handgun permits as introduced extends the fee waiver for a lifetime enhanced handgun carry permit to include a retired officer who is served for less than 10 years prior to retirement, who is post-certified and has equivalent training, and the date of the officer retired from service due to an injury received in the line of duty as a law enforcement. So what this bill is doing, members, is right now under code, if an officer has 10 years of service in and has an enhanced carry permit, he gets the lifetime fee waived. What this bill would do was would lower it for any officer injured in the line of duty, waiving that fee. I think that fee's $100. I think and I stand to be corrected on that, every 8 years. I might have it right. Yes, I take it back. It's I think it's $300. And what this bill would do is it would waive that fee for any officer that's been injured in the line of duty and has to retire.
Thank you for the explanation. Members, we got any questions or comments? Seeing none, we got the question called on the bill. We're voting on House Bill 1508. All those in favor of sending 1508 to full judiciary, vote by voting by aye. Those opposed, vote no. Has all members voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 7 ayes, 0 noes.
The ayes prevail.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Full judiciary. Congratulations. Next up is item number 1, House Bill 1491 by Representative Bullso. We got a motion and a second. Representative Bullso, you are recognized, and we do have somebody to testify for you after you give your description.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, members of the committee. This bill, HB 1491, is a bill to put voluntary vocal prayer back in our public schools. And the bill, as drafted, does essentially 3 things. One, as I mentioned, it will allow for voluntary vocal school prayer during non-instructional hours. And it's set up in a way that anyone who wants to participate, whether they're faculty, staff, or a student, will have to sign a written consent form at the beginning of the school year to ensure that the prayer is recited only between and among individuals who have agreed to participate. Secondly, it puts the Bible back in school to be taught K through 12 as history and as literature. Many of you are aware that the Bible itself is used in numerous works of literature, including in Shakespeare, who cites the Bible more than 1,300 times. And this bill, if enacted, would put the Bible in school to be taught as history and as literature, not as inspired word or as devotional. And then third, it sets up a procedural framework to deal with any type of litigation that might result arising out of the bill or regarding the Establishment Clause. And with that, Mr. Chairman, that's a summary of the bill.
Thank you for that explanation. And without objection, we'll go out of session to hear from our witness today. And if Johanna Cohane, I hope I got that right, you'll have 3 minutes. And once you begin speaking, just tell us who you are and we'll start the timer.
Thank you. My name is Johanna Cohane. I'm from Robertson County. I'm speaking here today as a Tennessean, a Republican, and a Christian about 2 objections to this bill. First, this bill has been described as bringing religion back to school, but it's never left school. Students across the state have been praying before finals and football games and everything in between. There's two parts to the freedom of religion found in the First Amendment. Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. To say that a public school should give primacy to teaching the Bible or making time to read from the Bible as prayer is a step towards establishing a religion. To cause a student to have to learn about a religion or have to be removed from class at a parent's request is not only establishing religion, but is prohibiting the free exercise of other religions. Prayer right now is a choice that students make between themselves and their own faith. And when a student chooses to do that, it is beautiful because it is their free choice. Don't take that away from them. Second, in this bill, it speaks about nativist and anti-Catholic bias. It's odd to me because today many of the bills being filed this year are exactly in tune with the very nativist thinking that is mentioned in this bill. We don't need to look back to the nativists of the 1830s and 50s who spoke out against the growing Irish Catholic population, just like they spoke out about the French before them and the Germans before them, just like they would take aim at the Asians, Italians, Hispanics, and Middle Eastern immigrants after that. America has a long history of one group arriving and then trying to close the door before anyone else can follow. The Christian nationalists of today are filing bills focusing on placing a Christian religion above all others and trying to deny those seen as other a chance to dream about an American life. But the really confusing thing to me as a Catholic, as a fellow Catholic actually, the Christian nationalist agenda that produces bills like this does not consider Catholics like myself as Christian. As I said above, the Christian nationalists of today are the nativists of yesteryear. At the end of his famous poem, Martin Niemöller says that they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me. That was a warning, because in the Christian nationalism that may have started by ostracizing atheists and those of Muslim and Jewish faiths, but eventually us Catholics will find our place in that Christian nationalist version of the first they came for poem. Thank you.
Ms. Cohen, thank you. Members, we have any questions from Ms. Cohen? Seeing none, we appreciate your testimony today. Thank you. Without objection, we'll go back in session. And Mr. Sponsor, would you like to comment on anything that was said during the testimony?
Just one thing that Ms. Cohen said, prayer never left schools. And that is both true and not true. It's true that wherever you have a person, including a child, there will be prayer. That's something that can never be taken away by any government. But it's also true that in 1962, our U.S. Supreme Court in the Engel versus Vitale case prohibited schools from praying out loud in the classroom. That was the entire purpose of Engel versus Vitale. That case arose from New York because the New York Board of Regents had a 22-word prayer that all public schools in New York would recite. It went, "Almighty God, we acknowledge our dependence upon thee, and we beg thy blessings upon us, our parents, our teachers, and our country." And the U.S. Supreme Court found that the reciting of that prayer publicly over an intercom system violated the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment. And so to say that prayer is going on in schools these days is true in the sense that it occurs privately, but it's not true in the sense that a school and school officials are prohibited from participating. And this bill will address that.
Thank you. In just a second, we're going to take questions from the committee, but would you talk about, there's already two statutes that allow prayer, 49.6.1004, and also the teaching of the Bible, 49.6.1026. Would you talk about how this new statute that you're going to make is going to differ from those two statutes?
Sure. The first that you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, deals with a moment of silence. And obviously, we've got in code already that schools begin their day with a moment of silence. But this goes beyond silence. This actually puts the law back to the way it was before 1962, when the U.S. Supreme Court decided Engel versus Vitale, and did so on an understanding of the Establishment Clause that our current U.S. Supreme Court has repudiated recently in at least 3 occasions: in the Espinoza case, the Carson versus Macon case, and the Kennedy versus Bremerton case. And then secondly, this bill, Mr. Chairman, goes beyond the current code with regard to the use of the Bible because it makes it a requirement that the Bible be taught to all children K through 12. It's not voluntary on the part of LEAs. We are, as a state, saying that the Bible is such an important part of education when taught as history and literature that it needs to be part of any proper English language arts and social studies program.
Thank you. And if I understand correct, the prayers can be voluntary and the Bible be taught to non-religious. Is that right? Or
The Bible will be taught in a non-devotional way.
non-devotional, I'm sorry, yes.
But even in that sense, the statute provides that a parent can opt a child out of Bible instruction if the parent chooses to do that.
Thank you. Any questions from the members? And Representative Johnson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess the first question is, it's been a while since I've actually looked at a fiscal note, and the fiscal note included cost of litigation because this is likely unconstitutional. So you have a huge fiscal note on this bill. Litigation is mentioned as a potential in the fiscal note. And have you talked to the AG about this bill, and is the Attorney General supportive of this legislation?
Representative Bozo, you're recognized, and y'all can go back and forth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me respond to both those points. First, I have not spoken directly with the Attorney General about the bill. And second, the fiscal note actually is generated more by the Bible part of the bill than by any threat of litigation, because the fact of the matter is that, our Board of Education reviews standards and curriculum on an 8-year cycle. And we're currently in the midst of one of those cycles from 2004 to 2026. May of 2026 is when the current cycle ends. And so if this bill were enacted the way it's written, it would require the board to conduct a review of the curriculum out of cycle, which is why it's generated that approximately $460,000 item from the Board of Education. And then also it would require production potentially of digital or paper textbooks at a cost of, I think, somewhere between $18 million and $37 million. But those issues, Representative Johnson, can be dealt with likely by tweaking the bill so that we would change the effective date of the Bible portion of the bill so that it coincides with the cycles during which the Board of Education reviews curricula and review standards.
Yes, but however, it did mention litigation could be it is listed and noted in the fiscal note. It's not all about the new curriculum, the training, and all these things that are going to have to happen. So another question is, which Bible? Will it be the King James Version, the New International Version, the American Standard Version, the Satanic Bible? Do they get to decide?
The bill is silent as to which version of the Bible will be used.
So they can use the Satanic Bible.
I did not say that, Representative Johnson. It's unrealistic. And I think maybe the best way to answer a lot of these questions that you're about to raise is just recall that we had prayer in school and Bible reading from before we were even a country all the way up until 1962 without incident. And there was never a public school that I'm aware of in any state or in any colony that proposed to use a Satanic Bible.
Well, they might now. So I think it's something that you're leaving wide open here. In addition to the fact that our Constitution currently does have a separation clause, and this is something that we're dealing with. And I'm curious of where you're talking about putting this into the curriculum. I heard you mention social studies and ELA, is that right? Or
let me first go back and correct something respectfully that you said, Representative Johnson.
Sure.
There is no separation of church and state in our Constitution. We have a separation of powers, but there is no provision in our Constitution that addresses separation of church and state. That does not exist.
Well,
It is-
I'm referring to the Establishment Clause. That's what I'm talking about.
All right. Well, the Establishment Clause certainly does not prohibit the bill that is before us because the Establishment Clause, as you know, is part of the First Amendment that we enacted on December 15 of 1791. And before December 15 of 1791, there was prayer in every public school in this country. We adopted the Bill of Rights, including the Establishment Clause. And recall that at the time the Establishment Clause was adopted, that there were at least 4 states that had established a religion. New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and Connecticut had adopted Congregationalist religion. Maryland at that time had established an Episcopal religion. The Establishment Clause states precisely that Congress shall enact no law respecting an establishment of religion. The Establishment Clause binds Congress. It has no application whatsoever to the states because even the states that voted for it at that time had established churches. And we also saw that after the Establishment Clause was adopted, prayer in public schools continued for more than 150 years, all the way up until 1962. So the idea that somehow the Establishment Clause prohibits prayer in schools, properly interpreted, I believe is not a tenable position.
Well, it's gone to court many times and it's been upheld so far. And as much as you want us to go back to 1960 or 1850 or whatever time, right now, I think that this idea, I've been on the Education Committee, I've been in this committee, and I'm not hearing anything about how we can spend money to help our students perform better, but it's about what ways can we put religion in our classrooms. And that's what we have traditionally gotten at home and at church and all of those things. And that our time in school is precious and limited. And we need to make sure that kids are prepared for those academic things, for those soft skills. And there is a reason that the fiscal note includes litigation. And it's a real good reason. And you can pretend like it's not and that you are right, but that is not what most case law states in modern America. And so I just want you to know that, and also to have a timeline of this is all going to be ready by July 1st. Do you understand what it will take to get the materials, to train teachers? A lot of people like to think they know what's in the Bible, but most don't. And we see that all the time around here. People need to get some serious training to understand how to teach it accurately. Just because you went to Sunday school as a kid or you go to church does not make you an expert on the history of the Bible. And so it's going to take a whole lot of time to get people up to a standard where they could historically teach the Bible accurately. And what all grade levels are we talking about? We don't know what subject areas. It looks like you're, I don't know, maybe looking for a lawsuit for your private business, but I just really have a lot of questions about this legislation.
Let's not make it personal.
Let me just,
Representative Bozo, you're recognized.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. I heard 3 points, and let me respond to the 3 that I heard Representative Johnson. First, putting prayer back in schools will benefit children more than any amount of money could, because one thing that we've seen since 1962, frankly, is a decline in the quality of education in this country. And one can certainly date that to the time that we sort of threw God out of the classroom and let secular humanism walk right in. And then secondly, you referred to in the recent jurisprudence. You can read Justice Gorsuch's opinion in County versus Bremerton, and he says explicitly that the Establishment Clause and the Free Exercise Clause are to be interpreted in accordance with historic practice and understanding. Now think about that. So what Justice Gorsuch is saying is essentially the same thing that Justice Thomas said in the Bruin decision, that we are going to use Justice Scalia's originalist interpretation of the text of our Constitution and see what the historic practice and understanding was. And as well as adopting that as the standard, the Kennedy decision threw out the Lemon test, which is what most pre-Kennedy jurisprudence relied on for excluding prayer in schools and other types of involvement with religion in the classroom. And when you look at the historic practice and understanding of the Establishment Clause, you go back to December 15 of 1791, what was enacted, and nobody can even make a colorable argument that the Establishment Clause was understood at that time to prohibit prayer in public schools, because if they had, prayer in public schools would have stopped. It didn't stop. It went on until 1962, when Justice Black and a majority of the Supreme Court in Engel versus Vitale used an erroneous interpretation of the Establishment Clause, which has now been discredited. And the final point, I think, is a good one, Representative Johnson. We do want people who are educated in the history of the Bible teaching our children. That's what we had from, frankly, 1642, when the first public school law was enacted in Massachusetts, all the way up until 1962. It will take some training, but it's going to be an investment that's well worth the return.
Okay.
And Representative Johnson, I'm going to recognize you, but let's keep it professional instead of personal. Okay, you recognize.
What I want to say is that we still have prayer in school. Kids can pray in school anytime they want. We have had a moment of silence every day since I've been there so that people can pray the way they choose. And what that does is allow people of different religions to say their own prayer, or those who are not religious at all to also not feel left out or forced into anything. And that is so critically important, because our public schools take every single child, and they come from a wide variety of backgrounds. And so to say that we have removed prayer is not an honest claim. And it is not what we need to do. It is not helpful to our kids. And when you say that schools got worse because of prayer, there's absolutely no data and research and empirical data to back that up. Because here's the facts. Since 1960, we have never had so many students graduate high school. Since 1960, we have never had so many students attend college. Since high school, we have never had so many students score so high on the ACT. So all of those things have improved greatly since the 1960s. So I'm not sure what you're referring to.
All right, Representative Todd, you're next on the list.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I really appreciate you bringing this bill, both for the organized prayer in school, as well as teaching the Bible. As you mentioned, alluded to, our founders literally started school so that people could learn to read the Bible. That was their whole goal in learning to read. And we can very much appreciate that now, looking at some of the negatives in our society since the early 60s. I think it goes back to pushing that out and leaving our kids out of that realm of understanding of where they come from. So I appreciate that. And certainly the entire history around the Bible in our public school system is tremendous. And the evidence is very clear and concise on that. So thank you for bringing this.
Representative, or do you have a follow-up?
If I could,
Absolutely.
Mr. Chairman, I just
Y'all are
want
free
to
to go back and forth.
I just want to say that I think what Representative Todd, what Chairman Todd has said is completely accurate, because, when that first law establishing public school in Massachusetts was passed in 1642, it provided for Bible reading and school prayer. In 1690, the New England Primer came into existence in Massachusetts, and that primer formed the basis for elementary education in this country all the way through the 19th century. It also included prayer and Bible reading. And this country was actually built when prayer was allowed and encouraged in school, and when understanding and studying of the Bible was allowed and encouraged as well. So, Chairman Todd, I think you're 100% correct.
Thank you. And Representative Davis, you're recognized unless Representative Todd's got a follow-up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, sponsor. One of the things that I wanted to mention was in reading your bill under the section where it says use of the Bible, it's got section A. It talks about how they're going to teach the students. And it clearly says under number 2, age appropriate instruction on the history of Israel, the stories and the moral and ethical teachings of the Old and New Testaments, the life of Jesus, the history of the early Christian church, and the Bible's influence on Western civilization. Now, I have not ever read a satanic Bible, but I don't believe that those are in the satanic Bible. Oh, sorry. I didn't know that you were fluent in
All right,
satanic
let's get
Bible.
back on the bill. Representative Bozo, do you have a follow-up?
Nothing further, Mr. Chairman. Thank
All
you.
right, we don't have anybody on the list, and we're going to take the vote. All those in favor of sending House Bill 1491 to full judiciary, vote aye. Those opposed, vote no. Has all members voted? Does anybody wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 7 ayes, 1 no.
The ayes prevail. Full judiciary. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee.
All right, I'd like to thank everybody for another great meeting of the Civil Justice Subcommittee. Without objection, we'll be adjourned.